Human Blood, Part 1. The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held delegates from 1,200 different species, each one representing billions of lives across thousands of worlds. Light from a dozen artificial suns bathed the space in soft golden warmth, and the air itself hummed with translation fields that converted every word into every known language. Simultaneously, Daniel Hayes stood alone on the human platform. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years of his life trying to earn humanity a permanent place in this chamber. Today, he knew that all of those years had been wasted. High Arbiter Velthan of the Silurian. Collective rose from his crystalline throne at the center of the chamber. The Silurians were ancient beings made of living light. And when Velthan moved, his body left trails of soft blue radiance in the air. His four eyes swept across the assembled delegates, and his voice echoed through every corner of the vast space. "The vote has been counted," Velthan announced. 947 species have voted in favor. 216 have voted against. 37 have abstained. The motion carries. Daniel felt his heart sink even though he had known this moment was coming. He had watched the votes trickle in over the past 3 days, had seen species that humanity had considered friends turn against them one by one. The reasons were always the same. Humanity was too aggressive, too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. Effective immediately, Velthan continued. The species known as humanity is hereby exiled from the galactic community. All trade agreements are terminated. All communication channels are to be severed. All transit gates connecting to the Sol system are to be dismantled. Humanity will be confined to their home system until such time as they demonstrate the capacity for peaceful coexistence. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates cheered. Others simply watched in silence. A few, a very few, looked away in shame. The Krethal delegate rose from his platform. The Krethal were massive insectoid creatures with gleaming black shells and razor-sharp mandibles, and they had been among humanity's loudest critics for decades. Ambassador Skethvorn clicked his mandibles together in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Perhaps in another 1,000 years," Skethvorn said, "the humans will evolve past their barbaric nature. Perhaps they will learn what every other civilized species learned long ago. Violence is weakness. Aggression is failure. The strong do not need to fight."
Yes.
Daniel wanted to respond. He wanted to point out that the Krethal had only achieved their peaceful society after a civil war that had killed billions of their own people. He wanted to remind the chamber that humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 200 years. Barely a heartbeat compared to species that measured their histories in millions of years. He wanted to argue that humans were still learning, still growing, still trying to find their place among the stars, but he knew that none of it would matter. The decision had been made. The votes had been cast. Humanity was alone. His earpiece crackled with a transmission from Earth. President Maria Delgado's voice came through, calm and steady despite everything. "Ambassador Hayes, you are hereby recalled. Come home." Daniel gathered his belongings slowly. He picked up his datapad and his translation device and his personal effects. He straightened his uniform and lifted his chin. He would not give these beings the satisfaction of seeing him broken. As he walked toward the exit, he passed by the Thessari delegation. The Thessari were telepathic beings who communicated through pure thought, and they had been silent throughout the entire debate. Their ambassador, a slender figure with silver skin and no visible eyes, reached out and touched Daniel's arm as he passed. No words were spoken.
Ah!
But Daniel felt a single thought press against his mind. It was warm and sad and carried a weight of meaning that words could never express. The thought said simply, "We are sorry. This is wrong." Daniel nodded once and continued walking. He reached the chamber doors and paused. Something made him turn back to face the assembly one final time. 1,200 species watched him from their floating platforms. Waiting to see what the last human in the Galactic Council would do, Daniel let his gaze sweep across the chamber. He looked at the Silurians with their light forms and their ancient wisdom. He looked at the Krethal with their shells and their certainty. He looked at the countless other beings who had decided that humanity was not worthy of their company. "You have made your decision," Daniel said quietly. His voice carried through the translation fields to every ear in the chamber. "Now you will live with it." He turned and walked out without looking back. The journey home took 3 weeks. Daniel traveled alone on a small diplomatic vessel, passing through gate after gate as council enforcement ships followed at a respectful distance. They were making sure he actually left, he knew. Making sure that no human remained in council space after the exile took effect. He spent most of the journey staring out the viewport at the stars. He thought about all the worlds he had visited over the past 30 years. He thought about the friends he had made among other species, the alliances he had built, the bridges he had tried to construct between humanity and the greater galaxy. All of it was gone now. All of it had been swept away by a single vote. When his ship finally emerged from the last gate into soul space, Daniel saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. A wall of council vessels surrounded the gate, hundreds of ships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. They were already beginning to dismantle the gate structure, tearing apart the only connection between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Daniel's communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. He accepted the call, and President Delgado's face appeared on the screen. "Welcome home, Ambassador," she said. Her expression was unreadable. "Thank you, Madam President. I am sorry. I failed." "No," Maria replied. "You did everything you could. The Council made their choice. Now we will make ours." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Maria smiled, and there was something in that smile that Daniel had never seen before. It was cold and hard and full of promise. "Come to Geneva, Ambassador. There is much to discuss." Daniel's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere as the last of the quantum communication buoys went dark above him. The orbital gates that had connected humanity to the greater galaxy were being reduced to scrap metal. Earth was alone now, cut off from everything it had worked so hard to achieve. But as Daniel's ship touched down at the Geneva spaceport, he saw something that made him pause. Military vehicles filled the tarmac. Soldiers in full combat gear marched in formation toward waiting transports. Construction equipment rumbled past, heading toward destinations unknown. President Delgado met him on the landing pad, flanked by generals and admirals from every major nation. Their faces were grim but determined. "The Council thinks they have beaten us," Maria said, as she shook Daniel's hand. "They think Exile will break our spirit and crush our will. They have made the worst mistake any enemy can make." "What mistake is that?" Maria turned to look at the sky. Where the last fading light of the dismantled gates still flickered against the stars, they have given us something to prove. Human Blood, Part 2, 5 years passed on Earth. 5 years of silence. 5 years of isolation. 5 years that changed everything. The Galactic Council had expected humanity to wither. They had expected riots and despair and collapse. They had expected desperate transmissions, begging for forgiveness, pleading for a second chance. They watched Earth through their monitoring satellites and waited for the inevitable. Breakdown. It never came. Instead, something else happened. Something the Council had never anticipated. Humanity stopped fighting itself. Nathan Brooks stood on the bridge of the ends, defiance, and stared through the viewport at the shipyard that stretched before him. Massive construction frames held dozens of vessels in various stages of completion. Sparks flew from welding torches. Robotic arms swung heavy plating into position. Workers in pressure suits crawled across hulls like ants on metal giants. "Status report," Nathan said to his first officer. Lieutenant Commander Diane Fuller checked her data pad. 47 vessels completed and operational. Another 63 in final assembly. The new quantum fold drive is performing 12% above projected parameters. Nathan nodded slowly. The quantum fold drive was humanity's greatest achievement. While every other species in the galaxy depended on the Council's gate network for faster-than-light travel, human scientists had developed something different. Something better. The quantum fold drive could punch through space itself, creating shortcuts that no gate could match. The Council had no idea it existed in the crew training programs. Nathan asked. "Ahead of schedule." Every ship has a full complement of trained personnel. Combat readiness is at 94% across the fleet. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. 5 years ago, humanity had been scattered and divided. Nations had squabbled over resources and territory and ideology. Old hatreds had simmered beneath thin veneers of diplomacy. The Exile had changed all of that. When the Council cut Earth off from the galaxy, they had given humanity a common enemy. Every factory that had once produced consumer goods now produced ship components. Every university that had once competed for prestige now shared research freely. Every soldier who had once served a single nation now served the entire species. Humanity had become united. And a united humanity was something the galaxy had never seen before. In Geneva, Dr. Samuel West worked through another sleepless night. His laboratory was buried 300 feet beneath the Swiss Alps, hidden from any satellite that might be watching from above. Around him, dozens of other scientists hunched over equipment that would have seemed like magic to previous generations. Samuel's specialty, atmospheric processing. His invention, a compact device no larger than a refrigerator, could extract fuel from the atmosphere of any gas giant. It meant that human ships would never need to rely on Council supply lines. It meant that humanity could travel anywhere in the galaxy without asking permission from anyone. His communicator buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw a video message from his daughter, Claire. She was 7 years old today, and she was holding up a birthday cake with candles shaped like rockets. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" she asked in the recording. "Mommy says you are doing important work. I miss you." Samuel wiped his eyes and saved the message. He had not been home in 14 months. His daughter was growing up without him. His wife was raising their child alone. The price of progress was steep, and Samuel paid it every single day. His colleague, Dr. Linda Torres, approached with a tablet in her hands. "The final tests are complete. The atmospheric processor is ready for mass production. How many can we build? If we convert the remaining civilian factories, we can produce 300 units per month. Every ship in the fleet will have one within 6 months." Samuel nodded and turned back to his work. There would be time for family later. There would be time for rest later. Right now, humanity needed him to keep going. On the dark side of the moon, hidden from Earth and hidden from Council satellites, the first human exploration vessel prepared for launch. The End's Pathfinder was smaller than the warships being built in the orbital shipyards. But her mission was just as important. Captain Margaret Sullivan sat in the command chair and reviewed her orders one final time. She was to travel beyond the boundaries of Council-monitored space. She was to search for allies among species the Council had forgotten or abandoned. She was to find friends in the darkness. "Navigation is set," reported her helmsman, a young man named Christopher Dale. "We are ready to jump on your command." Margaret looked around at her crew. 47 men and women who had volunteered for a mission that might take years. 47 people who might never see Earth again. They looked back at her with steady eyes and calm faces. "Engage the quantum fold drive," Margaret ordered. The stars outside the viewport stretched and twisted. Reality itself seemed to bend around the ship. Then, with a flash of light that existed in colors no human eye could normally see, the Pathfinder vanished from soul space. She reappeared 3,000 light-years away. In a region of space that no Council ship had visited in centuries, Margaret stared at the unfamiliar star patterns on her navigation display and felt a thrill of excitement run through her chest. "We made it," Christopher whispered. "We actually made it." "This is just the beginning," Margaret replied. "Start scanning for habitable worlds. Look for any sign of intelligent life. The Council thinks they know everything about this galaxy. Let us prove them wrong." Back on Earth, in a conference room beneath the Pentagon, the leaders of humanity gathered for their weekly strategy meeting. President Robert Mitchell of the United States sat at the head of the table. Around him sat Premier Zhang Wei of China, President Alina Volkov of Russia, Chancellor Hans Bremer of the European Federation, and Prime Minister Priya Sharma of India. 5 years ago, these people would have been rivals. 5 years ago, they would have schemed against each other and competed for advantage. Now they worked together as smoothly as the fingers of a single hand. "Fleet production is ahead of schedule," reported General Patricia Cole, the commander of Earth's unified military forces. "We will have 300 combat-ready vessels within 18 months. What about the Council's monitoring satellites?" asked Premier Zhang. "They see exactly what we want them to see. Surface activity only. Our orbital construction is completely hidden behind our electromagnetic countermeasures." President Mitchell leaned forward. "And the Pathfinder mission?" "Captain Sullivan reports successful arrival in unmonitored space. She's begun searching for potential allies." The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone present understood what was at stake. They were building something unprecedented. They were preparing for something that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. "The Council gave us 5 years of isolation," President Mitchell said slowly. "They expected us to fall apart. Instead, we have built the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. We have developed technology that surpasses anything they possess. We have unified our entire species under a single purpose." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over Washington, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. "When we were part of the Council, we were divided and weak. They looked at us and saw primitives playing at civilization. They saw barbarians who could not control their violent impulses." He turned back to face the room. "They were right about one thing. We are violent. We are aggressive. We have spent our entire history fighting and killing each other." Mitchell's eyes hardened. "But now we have stopped fighting each other. Now we have turned all of that violence, all of that aggression, all of that savage determination outward. The Council wanted to teach us a lesson about our place in the galaxy." He smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. "Instead, they have created the very thing they feared most. They have given us a reason to remember what we truly are." Human Blood, Part 3. The Vorith had been exiled 300 years before humanity even discovered fire. Their crime was simple. They refused to give up their warrior traditions. They refused to pretend that strength was something to be ashamed of. The Galactic Council had cast them out and expected them to die in the cold darkness between stars. Instead, they had survived. They had grown stronger. And they had waited. Captain Margaret Sullivan guided the Pathfinder toward the massive station that hung in orbit around a blood-red planet. The station was ugly by Council standards. It was all sharp angles and heavy armor and weapons that bristled from every surface like thorns on a metal flower. It was a fortress built by a people who had learned to trust nothing and no one. "They are hailing us," reported Communications Officer David Park. "Put it through." The view screen flickered to life. A face appeared that was not quite reptilian and not quite mammalian, but something in between. Scales covered thick skin the color of dried blood. Yellow eyes with slitted pupils stared out from beneath a heavy brow ridge. Scars crisscrossed the face like a map of old battles. "You are human," the creature said. Its voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "We have heard of your exile. Why have you come here?" Margaret stood from her chair and faced the screen directly. "I am Captain Margaret Sullivan of Earth. I've come to speak with your leaders." "Speak about what?" "About the Galactic Council. About what they did to your people. About what they have done to mine." Margaret paused. "About what we might do together." The Vorith on the screen was silent for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. It might have been surprise. It might have been interest. It might have been the first faint stirring of hope. "Dock at Platform 7, he said. "Commander Krathvos will meet with you." The meeting took place in a chamber that smelled of metal and smoke. Vorith guards lined the walls, each one carrying weapons that looked ancient but well-maintained. Commander Krathvos sat at the head of a long stone table, its massive frame dwarfing the chair beneath him. Margaret sat across from him with only 2 of her officers for company. She had been warned that bringing more might be seen as a threat. The Vorith respected courage. And walking into their stronghold with minimal protection was the best way to earn that respect. "You are young," Krathvos rumbled. His scales shifted colors as he spoke, flashing from red to orange to deep purple. "Your exile is fresh. The anger is still hot in your blood, and yours has cooled. Margaret asked. Krathvos made a sound that might have been a laugh. Cooled, yes, but never extinguished. 300 years we have waited. 300 years we have watched the council grow fat and complacent. 300 years we have dreamed of the day when they would answer for what they did to us. Then perhaps our timing is fortunate. Perhaps. Krathvos leaned forward, and the table creaked under his weight. What do you want from us, human? What do you offer in return? Margaret pulled out a data chip and placed it on the table. This contains the specifications for our quantum fold drive. It allows faster-than-light travel without using the Council's gate network. We are prepared to share this technology with you freely. Krathvos did not touch the chip. His yellow eyes narrowed. Freely. Nothing free. What is your price? Alliance. Not just with the Voreth, but with every species the Council has wronged. Every civilization they have abandoned. Every people they have decided were not worthy of their precious community. Margaret met his gaze without flinching. The Council has made many enemies over 60,000 years. I intend to find them all. The chamber fell silent. Krathvos stared at Margaret for a long time. His scales shifted through a dozen colors that she could not interpret. Finally, he reached out and picked up the data chip. You have courage, human. Your species is young and small and weak by galactic standards. Yet you come here and speak of alliance with species that have existed since before your world had oceans. He closed his massive fist around the chip. I respect courage, so I will tell you something that the Council does not want anyone to know. What is that? You will find more friends than you expect. The Council's arrogance has created many enemies. Some of them are very old. Some of them are very powerful. And all of them have been waiting for someone foolish enough or brave enough to stand up first. Over the next 2 years, the Pathfinder traveled to corners of the galaxy that had been forgotten for millennia. Margaret Sullivan and her crew found species that had been exiled, species that had been conquered, species that had simply been ignored because they did not fit the Council's narrow definition of civilization. The Thesari had been cast out for refusing to share their telepathic abilities. They lived on hidden stations in the spaces between stars, communicating through networks of pure thought that no technology could detect. They offered humanity access to those networks, a way to coordinate across impossible distances without the Council ever knowing. The Marinth were ancient beyond measure. They had existed when the Council itself was young, and they had been exiled simply for living too long. The Council feared their accumulated wisdom and their long memories. The Marinth offered humanity knowledge that had been gathered over millions of years. Secrets that could change the course of civilizations. The Krell had been punished for developing weapons. The Council deemed too dangerous. They lived in hollowed-out asteroids, still building and improving their terrible machines. They offered humanity firepower that could crack planets and shatter moons. One by one, exiled species joined humanity's cause. They did not do it out of kindness or charity. They did it because they saw something in humanity that reminded them of themselves. They saw a young species that refused to accept its fate. They saw a people who had been knocked down and had chosen to get back up swinging, back on Earth. Admiral Kevin Parker reviewed the latest reports from the Pathfinder with growing excitement. The Alliance now included 17 species, 17 civilizations that the Council had thrown away. 17 peoples who had been told they were worthless and had spent centuries proving otherwise. The fleet is ready, reported Commander Jessica Morgan. 312 vessels fully armed and crewed. The allied species have contributed another 140 ships. Our combined force is larger than anything the Council has faced in 30,000 years. Kevin nodded slowly. He walked to the window of his office and looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Council was going about its business as usual. They held their debates and their cultural exchanges. They celebrated their art and their philosophy. They congratulated themselves on maintaining peace for 60 millennia. They had no idea what was coming. Send word to President Mitchell, Kevin said. Tell him we are ready to move to the next phase. What message should I include? Kevin turned away from the window. His face was hard and his eyes were cold. Tell him that humanity remembers. Tell him that our allies remember. Tell him that the Council is about to learn what happens when you throw away the people you should have kept close. He paused at the door. Tell him it is time for the galaxy to see what human blood can do. Human Blood Part 4 Nexus Prime was the jewel of the Krethal civilization. Crystal towers rose 3 miles into the pink sky. Floating gardens drifted between buildings like clouds made of flowers. Rivers of pure water flowed through channels of polished stone, and the air itself was perfumed with scents that had been engineered for maximum pleasure. 12 million Krethal lived on Nexus Prime. They spent their days in meditation and art and philosophical debate. They had not known war for 15,000 years. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They had no defenses of any kind. Why would they need such things? The Galactic Council had maintained peace for 60 millennia. Violence was a relic of primitive times. The Krethal had evolved beyond such barbarism long ago. Governor Skethel stood on the balcony of his administrative tower and watched the sunset paint the crystal spires in shades of gold and crimson. It was a beautiful evening. It was a peaceful evening. It was an evening like 10,000 evenings before it. Then the sky tore open. Ships emerged from holes in reality itself. They did not come through gates. They did not follow established transit routes. They simply appeared. Dozens of them. Hanging in the sky like metal predators above a field of prey, Skethel's mandibles clicked together in confusion. His forearms trembled as he reached for his communication device. His mind struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. "This is impossible," he whispered. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. And it was only the beginning. Admiral Kevin Parker stood on the bridge of the Ends, Retribution, and looked down at the world below. 90 human vessels surrounded Nexus Prime in a perfect sphere of steel and firepower. Their weapons were armed. Their shields were raised. Their crews were ready for anything. "Open a channel to the planetary government," Kevin ordered. Communications Officer Lisa Chen worked her console. "Channel open, Admiral." Face of Governor Skethel appeared on the view screen. His scales had gone pale with fear. His mandibles would not stop clicking. His voice came out in a high-pitched whine that the translation software struggled to interpret. "You cannot be here," Skethel said. "You are exiled. You are confined. The Council decreed that you would never leave your system again." Ivan smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "And yet, here we are. This is an act of war. The Council will destroy you for this. They will send their fleets. They will burn your world to ash. They will wipe your species from existence. Perhaps." Kevin clasped his hands behind his back. "But not today. Today we are simply delivering a message." "What message?" "That the Council was wrong about us. That Exile did not break us. That we are not the primitive barbarians they believed us to be." Kevin paused and let his words sink in. "We could destroy your world right now, Governor. Our weapons are locked on your population centers. One command from me, and 12 million Krethal would cease to exist." Skethal made a sound that might have been a sob. "Please, we have done nothing to you. We are peaceful. We are harmless, as you are. That is why we will not fire. We are not here to murder civilians. We are not here to conquer territory. We are here to prove a point." Kevin leaned forward. "You voted to exile us, Governor. Your species called us barbarians and savages. You said we were too violent to exist among civilized peoples. I was not the one who voted. I was not even born when the decision was made. But you agreed with it. Your entire civilization agreed with it. You looked at humanity and saw animals to be caged." Kevin's voice hardened. "Look at us now, Governor. Look at our ships and our weapons and our technology. Look at what we built in 5 short years while you meditated in your gardens and debated philosophy in your crystal towers. Then tell me again who the primitives are." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out at the same moment. Human fleets appeared over Council worlds without warning. They emerged from quantum fold space in perfect synchronization, their arrival timed down to the second. No shots were fired. No demands were made. They simply appeared, demonstrated their presence, and waited on the Silurian homeworld. Ambassador Velton received word that 300 human vessels had materialized in orbit. His light form flickered with emotions that had no names in any human language. On the Thessaly stations, hidden observers watched as human ships passed by, acknowledging their presence with brief pulses of thought before continuing on their way. On the Vorith fortress stations, Commander Krathvos raised a glass of bitter wine in salute. "The humans have done it," he said to his officers. "They have shown the Council what Exile truly created." The Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed and argued and demanded explanations. Some called for immediate war. Others called for negotiation. Others simply fled. Convinced that the end of civilization had finally arrived, High Arbiter Velthon struggled to restore order. His light form blazed with intensity as he tried to make himself heard above the noise. "Silence," he commanded. "We must respond to this crisis with wisdom, not panic." "Wisdom," shrieked the Krethal ambassador. "They have ships over our homeworld. They appeared from nowhere. How is this possible? How did they develop technology we do not possess?" "Because you gave them 5 years of complete isolation," said a calm voice from the back of the chamber. Every head turned. Every eye focused on the figure walking down the central aisle. It was a human. It was Ambassador Daniel Hayes, the same man who had left this chamber in disgrace 5 years ago. Behind him walked representatives from 17 different species, all of them exiles, all of them forgotten. "You," Velthon whispered. "You were recalled. You were supposed to remain on Earth." "I was," Daniel agreed. He climbed to the speaker's platform and faced the assembly without fear. "But as you can see, Earth is no longer confined to a single system. We go where we please now, we do what we choose, and we answer to no one but ourselves. This is an act of war." "No, this is a demonstration." Daniel gestured to the viewport, where a single human vessel had appeared in orbit around the Council homeworld itself. "That ship is the ENS Defiance. It could destroy this chamber and everyone in it before your defense grid even knew it was there. You have 300 more ships just like it scattered across your territory. But we have not fired a single shot. We have not harmed a single being. Do you know why?" Velthon did not answer. "Because we are not the savages you believed us to be. Because violence is a tool, not a way of life. Because we know the difference between proving a point and starting a war." Daniel paused and let his gaze sweep across the chamber. "You exiled us because you feared what we might become. We're right to fear us. But you were wrong about what we would do with that power." He reached into his coat and pulled out a data crystal. He placed it on the podium before him. "This contains a proposal for a new agreement between humanity, our allies, and the Galactic Council. It offers peace. It offers cooperation. It offers a chance to correct the mistake you made 5 years ago." Daniel straightened his shoulders. "You have 1 week to respond? After that, we will assume you have chosen a different path." He turned and walked toward the exit, his allied delegates following close behind. "Wait," Velthon called out. "What happens if we refuse?" Daniel paused at the door. He looked back over his shoulder. "Then you will discover what happens when you corner a species that has nothing left to lose." He walked out without waiting for a response. Human Blood. Part 5. The negotiations lasted 6 months. They were the hardest 6 months in the history of galactic diplomacy. Old hatreds boiled to the surface. Ancient grudges demanded satisfaction. Species that had not spoken to each other in millennia were forced to sit at the same table and find common ground. Many times the talks came close to collapse. The Krethal refused to acknowledge that their vote for exile had been wrong. The Silurians insisted that humanity must apologize for their show of force. The Voreth demanded reparations for 3 centuries of isolation. Everyone had grievances. Everyone had wounds that had never healed. But somehow, day by day and argument by argument, progress was made. Daniel Hayes spent those 6 months sleeping no more than 4 hours a night. He shuttled between delegations, smoothing over conflicts and building bridges where none had existed before. He listened to complaints and absorbed insults and never once lost his temper. He reminded himself every morning why he was doing this. Not for revenge, not for pride, for the future. President Maria Delgado traveled to the council, homeworld, to personally oversee the final stages of negotiation. She was the first human head of state to set foot on alien soil since the Exile. When she walked into the council chamber, every eye turned to watch her. She was a small woman with gray hair and deep lines around her eyes. She did not look like a conqueror. She did not look like a threat. She looked like a grandmother who had seen too much and was tired of fighting. "We did not want this," Maria said to the assembled delegates. "We did not want exile. We did not want isolation. We did not want to spend 5 years building weapons and planning demonstrations of force. All we ever wanted was a seat at this table, a voice in this chamber, a chance to prove that humanity had something to offer the galaxy." She paused and looked at the faces around her. Some were hostile, some were curious, were simply exhausted. "You gave us none of those things. You looked at our history and saw only violence. You looked at our nature and saw only barbarism. You decided that we were not worthy of your community, and you threw us away like garbage." Maria's voice hardened. "That was your mistake. Not because we came back stronger. Not because we built ships and weapons and alliances. Your mistake was assuming that violence was all we were capable of. Your mistake was forgetting that the same fire that drives us to fight also drives us to create, to explore, to dream, to love." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It showed a young girl with dark hair and bright eyes smiling at the camera. "This is my granddaughter. Her name is Sophia. She is 8 years old. She has never known a galaxy where humans were welcome. She has grown up believing that her species was hated and feared by everyone else in the universe." Maria held up the photograph for everyone to see. "I am not here for revenge. I am not here for conquest. I am here for her. I am here so that she can grow up in a galaxy where being human is not a crime." The chamber was silent. High Arbiter Velthon rose slowly from his seat. His light form had dimmed over the past 6 months. The stress of the crisis had taken its toll, even on an immortal being of pure energy. "We have deliberated," he said. "We have argued. We've examined our history and our choices and our failures. The council has reached a decision." Every delegate leaned forward. Every breath was held. The fate of civilizations hung on the next words. "The exile of humanity is hereby revoked. Earth will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges that entails. The same offer is extended to all species who were exiled alongside humanity, or who joined their alliance during this crisis." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates cheered. Others sat in stunned silence. A few walked out in protest, unable to accept what was happening. Velton raised his hand for quiet. "Furthermore, the Council acknowledges that our policy of exile was flawed. We cast out species for being different, for refusing to conform, for holding on to traditions we did not understand. This was wrong. From this day forward, no species will be exiled simply for its nature. Differences will be negotiated, not punished. Diversity will be celebrated, not feared." Daniel Hayes felt tears streaming down his face. 5 years of work. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of hoping against hope that this moment would come. It was finally here. Maria Delgado stepped forward and extended her hand to Velton. The High Arbiter hesitated for just a moment, then reached out with a tendril of light and wrapped it around her fingers. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, Madam President," Velthon said. "May this be the beginning of a new era for all our peoples." 1 year later, the memorial was completed. It stood in the center of Geneva, a tower of white stone that rose 300 feet into the sky. At its base, a ring of statues depicted ordinary people doing ordinary things. A mother holding a child. A worker carrying tools. A teacher standing before students. A soldier laying down his weapon. The inscription carved into the stone was simple. It read, "They told us we were alone. They were wrong." Dr. Samuel West stood before the memorial with his daughter Claire, who was now 13 years old. She had grown so much in the years he had been away. She was almost as tall as him now, and she had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. "You helped build this, Daddy," Claire said. "You helped save everyone." Samuel shook his head. "I just did my part. Everyone did their part. That is why we won. Not because we were stronger or smarter or better, because we worked together. Because we refused to give up. Because we remembered who we were." Across the galaxy, the changes continued. Human ships traveled freely through council space. Human scientists shared their discoveries with species that had once called them barbarians. Human artists and musicians and writers found audiences on worlds that had never heard of Earth. The Voreth came out of hiding and established new colonies on worlds they had only dreamed of for 3 centuries. The Thessari opened their minds to species beyond their own kind for the first time in recorded history. The Morinth shared their ancient wisdom freely, no longer afraid of being punished for knowing too much. Ambassador Daniel Hayes stood before the Galactic Council one final time. He was old now, so old that he needed a cane to walk and assistance to stand. But his voice was still strong, and his eyes were still bright. "I have served humanity for over 40 years, he said. "I have seen us at our worst and at our best. I have watched us tear each other apart and come together again. I have witnessed miracles and tragedies and everything in between." He looked around the chamber at the thousands of delegates who had gathered to hear him speak. "When the council voted to exile us, I thought everything was lost. I thought humanity would be forgotten, just another failed species that could not adapt to galactic civilization. I was wrong." Daniel smiled, and there was peace in that smile. "We were not broken by exile. We were forged by it. We discovered that our greatest strength was not our ships or our weapons or our technology. Our greatest strength was the thing that pumps through every human heart. The thing that kept our ancestors alive through ice ages and plagues and wars. The thing that drove us from caves to stars." He raised his fist to his chest. "Human blood. It is stubborn and fierce and refuses to surrender. It burns with a fire that cannot be extinguished. It carries the memories of everyone who came before us and the hopes of everyone who will come after." Daniel lowered his hand and leaned on his cane. "The council once asked what humanity had to offer the galaxy. Now you know. We offer our determination, our creativity, our refusal to accept limits. We offer the same fire that brought us here today." He turned and began walking toward the exit, his steps slow but steady. "We offer our blood, and we always will." The chamber erupted in applause. Delegates from 1,000 species rose to their feet. The sound echoed through halls that had stood for 60,000 years. Carrying with it the promise of a new beginning, humanity had come home, and the galaxy would never be the same.